We went to do a routine EV charger install, the type that we've done 100 times before, a 60 amp circuit, mild pipe run. And when we opened the panel, we pretty much immediately knew that this was not going to be the routine.
Right, right. You found a Federal Pacific panel, didn't you?
That was a Federal Pacific panel with
Can you
the.
believe there's still in between 2 and 4 million houses in America?
That's insane.
It's nuts, and most people have absolutely no idea they have one.
Eco, eco, we got that eco energy. You know, we got that eco energy. Plug in eco energy. Let's go, go. Plug in eco energy. Oh, eco, eco. Got that eco energy. You know.
I have a story.
Let's hear it.
We had a customer call up, and we went out to the job and took a look at the project they were looking to do. And basically, they wanted to add some circuits, and the old Federal Pacific panel was in there. And of course, they're notorious for a spontaneous combustion, I think.
Yeah.
The breakers don't trip, basically, and they sit there and melt, and you pop and fizzle and buzz, and you can hear them burning internally, but they don't trip, which wasn't happening when I was out there, but I let the customer know, hey, this is a fire hazard, and you should be aware of it. And like, okay, well, how much is a new panel? So we quoted them a new panel, but at the end of the day, it was a little more than their budget was allowing for them at that time. So they passed on it, and we were... Shoot, maybe a month later, I was out, maybe 2 months. It could have been that long, and I was out of town, and I get a frantic phone call. I smell like an electrical burning, and I directed her back to the panel, which I knew was the problem.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the panel actually was catching fire, and you try to shut the breaker off, and it won't shut off, and so. Ended up like disabling. I was like walking her through, like unplug this, unplug that, unplug this, and don't use that hair dryer in your bathroom anymore until you change that panel out. So very narrowly escaped a house fire, but there have been many, many, many instances of house fires in this panel.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people, I know myself, when I trip a breaker, I think of it as an annoyance.
Yeah.
Right. This is
Yeah.
a thing that's breaking up my day in a way I don't like.
Yeah.
But I don't often think about what would happen if that breaker didn't trip.
Yeah.
And that's the case in these Federal Pacific, and Zinsco as well
Yeah.
is another very famous faulty panel.
Yeah.
That millions are in houses, and when the breakers don't trip, like you said, it melts the breakers. It causes damage to the buses that is permanent.
Yeah.
And it leads to emergency repairs that are more costly.
Very expensive. Very
Yeah,
expensive.
exactly.
Yeah. So before we get into what happened, walk us through a normal EV charger install.
Yeah, I mean, normally we show up to the job site, and we'll do walkthroughs before the job. That way we can get all of our ducks in a row. But normally it's a standard panel with modern breakers.
Yeah.
Think GE,
Square D,
Siemens,
Eaton, yeah.
Square D.
Right.
All those are standard safe breakers
Yeah.
that have stood the test of time.
Yes.
And it's a simple run out of the panel over to wherever the garage is.
Two
Maybe
pole
we got a
breaker.
trench. Yeah, 2 pole, typically 60 amp breaker.
Okay.
And it's all fairly straightforward.
Number 6 wire, of course.
Of course. nothing lower. Number 6 THHN.
Yeah.
But no, that isn't the case every once in a while.
Okay.
And it can get a little tricky when a homeowner calls us to do an EV charger, and maybe they looked up what an average price is for that, and they've got that number in their head.
I think some people just think they can plug it in, though, like right into a regular standard garage outlet.
And we see that happen all the time. A
Yeah.
lot of times we'll get called out to the job, and the customer will point to that garage outlet that
Yeah,
they've been
can't
trying
you run
to
that?
charge on. Hey, I got the car 2 weeks ago, and I tried plugging it in, and a lot of times it's with the bigger cars, the Hummers,
Sure.
the GMC Sierras, all those high battery cars. And they're like, yeah, I plugged it on Tuesday Tuesday and it said it would be charged on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's an unexpected expense that the homeowner needs to do. And then we walk into the house and we're looking at what we have to do, which is, like you said, install a 2-pole breaker in the
Yes.
panel, run a dedicated pipe out to that EV charger. And, in a standard panel, it can be fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
And when we walk in and we see a Federal Pacific, a Zinsco, even the old Pushmatic panels
Yes.
that aren't necessarily known to fail, but they're very hard to get parts and breakers for these days.
Right.
It's best to replace those as well because of just how old they are. But in that situation, the customer is hit with something they didn't expect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's not a cheap, I didn't expect that.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
kind of a costly, I didn't expect that.
It absolutely can be.
Yeah. So, normal 200 amp panel, you got room to add a 50 amp EV or 60 amp EV charger. No issues, right?
Exactly. That would be a standard case.
So what's the first sign that something's wrong with the panel?
And honestly, like, I can tell within looking at it for about 10
Yeah,
to
but
20 seconds.
you've looked at 200, 300, 400 of them in the last 12 months.
at least. But there are a few key indicators that I kind of look for.
Okay.
The first one is honestly the panel size. When I walk
Okay.
in there and it's a tiny little panel, we're talking like literally this big.
Yeah, small box.
Right, small
Yeah.
box on the wall.
Yeah.
And occasionally we even still see fuses. Very, very rare, but occasionally we'll see it.
We saw one 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
When the house took an electrical surge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still out there like those
Oh, yeah.
other panels.
Yeah.
But the first indicator is the size. If it's real tiny, then it's
Small
likely,
physical size panel.
Yes,
it.
exactly. Then it's likely an older panel that may be an issue.
Okay.
The second indicator is literally by opening the door, just the door, not even taking the screws
How about
off.
the brand name right on the label?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what I'm getting to. Is
Okay.
once you open the door, you'll see the brand name. Sometimes it's even
On the
right
outside.
the outside, like you
Yeah.
can see right here.
That's a
It's
Wadsworth.
printed right there. This is a fuse box.
A Wadsworth fuse box.
Yeah.
We actually
And-
pulled that out of a senior living center
Mhm.
that had that was a fire alarm panel,
Yeah.
and it's the old slow blow Edison fuses.
Yeah. And that can cause serious issues if your fire alarm circuit goes down. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
The other, looking at the brand name, if it's a Zinsco, a Federal Pacific, or a Pushmatic,
Yeah.
are the big three.
Okay.
That are known for failures. Some of the other ones that can give you
Stab-Loks.
pause. Yeah, the Stab-Loks are another big one.
Yep.
Some of the ones that we want to take a second look at, open up the actual panel door and take a look at the interior.
Well, when we're looking at a job, that's standard procedure.
Yeah.
Open up the panel cover so we can see what's inside.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. But you want to take a look on the Challenger, your Murray GE. The reason being because those aren't necessarily known for failure.
Right.
But what they are is they're discontinued and
Right,
they're
yeah,
older.
yeah.
So that kind of prompts us to dig a little deeper and make sure that we're going to be okay once we actually need to install something. on that.
Generally speaking, what is the lifespan of a panel?
Residential panels, and correct me if I'm wrong because you would know better than I, but I believe it's 10 years.
I think it's 25.
Okay.
That's the expected lifespan of a panel.
Yeah,
25 years, yeah.
yeah. So,
But I think what you're thinking of is that ground rod
yeah,
is
ground rod.
needs to be your ground needs to be tested every 10 years, and if it's not, you could potentially have some, where we talked about the surge protectors. We had an episode about that, so
Yep.
go back and find the surge protection one. You'll learn about ground rods.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of teased me with you walked in and saw a mess. So let's get back to that. Tell me about this nightmare panel.
Yeah, so, the first thing I did then was I opened up the panel to see what's actually inside.
Yeah.
And I saw some double-tapped breakers, which for those of you that don't know what a double-tap breaker is, it's basically two wires landed into one lug on the breaker.
That's
on
not
one
rated
single
for that.
breaker. Right. There's one model of breaker that's rated for that under specific situations,
Yeah.
but none of those older panels are.
Correct.
So So we saw double tapped wires, which
Okay.
the problem there is someone, after initial construction, more than likely, said, "Oh, I need a new circuit outside. I want to run my lighting for Christmas or
Yeah.
whatever." And they said, "Oh, shoot, I'm out of spots. Well, I'll just
Yeah.
put a second wire in there.
Yeah, I
Can't
can fit
cause
another
any
wire
harm."
in there.
Right, but the expansion and
Right.
contracting of that copper
Right.
can cause issues down the line and create heat. And
Absolutely.
heat is the enemy of electricians, honestly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, we saw some double tap breakers. We
Okay.
saw some older wiring methods that aren't approved anymore and are a safety hazard, known to be a safety hazard.
Okay.
And it was a bigger job than the homeowner was expecting, and that isn't honestly a super fun conversation.
Yes.
To bring that to their attention.
Because now they're more than doubling the cost of their EV charger install
Yep.
in one stop.
Yeah. The grounding system was also outdated.
Okay.
We didn't have a ground jumper on our water heater.
Is this the same one that you saw where they fed the EV charger through the meter, or is that, this
That's
is another
a different one.
Okay.
That's a different one.
Okay.
But that's also worth mentioning is in the early days, especially of EV charging.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother wanted a piece of the action
Yeah.
because it's one of the fastest growing things, and people
Right.
didn't know a ton about it.
Yeah.
So
I know a guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a guy.
My cousin's brother can do it.
Yeah.
And that was the reality for a lot of people because nobody knew any better. It's just an electric.
So for our viewers out there, we think that most electricians should be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
And here in Illinois, we have a certification for electric vehicle charging installers, and you can find that online. It's the ICC,
Yep.
Illinois Commerce Commission, and make sure that whoever you're having install your EV is certified in that program. So what the ICC will do is, in order for your installer to be verified, they have to have performed the work. They have to show competency. They have to show that they've taken training courses. And this all gets submitted to the state of Illinois for a docket review.
Yeah.
They review it. They call references. They make sure you're the real deal, that you know what you're doing, that you've got the accreditation required. And then they will issue your ICC certification.
Yep.
And if you don't have that certification, you're likely not a competent installer. You can be a licensed electrician, but to be a competent electric vehicle charger installer, that's another level.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And the install that you kind of referenced right there was done by a licensed electrician.
Yeah.
So what had happened is the customer wanted a charger on the outside of their house, which is fine. You can absolutely do that.
Yep, they're rated
But-
for outdoor.
Yep. And only under certain conditions. You got to do a couple of things, make sure the actual charger's rated for it. But
Yep.
all of that was actually met.
Okay.
What wasn't met was their method to get outside, right? So you have a meter on the side of your house. Every single house has a
Sure.
meter from the electric company. And the only wires that are allowed to be in that meter are the wires that
Service
are feeding
conductors.
your panel. Yeah, they're called service conductors. And what we found when we went out to do that walkthrough was that the previous electrician had run their pipe right into the meter can and then run their wires straight into the panel from there, and that's a violation.
So what do you do at that point?
You got to take the pipe out of the meter housing, and you've got to run a dedicated pipe straight from that charger into the panel. And we retrofitted that install to be code compliant.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure that people didn't even know. They called a licensed electrician thinking that they're going to get the job done right.
Yeah.
You had mentioned another one where he had 4 EV chargers and a 200 amp panel, and
That was actually a 100 amp panel.
oh wow, yeah,
So-
4 EV chargers on a 100 amp panel, and this was done by a licensed electrician as well, or is this?
So one of the EV chargers was done by a licensed electrician.
Okay.
3 of the EV chargers were done by either handyman or the homeowner.
Okay.
He, once I pointed out the issues, he didn't really want to say who did it. So in this case, I got a call from a guy who wanted an EV charger, and he said he was having some issues with his EV charger that was existing.
Okay.
And when I get there, I'm looking around and I'm like, oh my God, there's an EV charger there, an EV charger there, an EV charger there, an EV charger there.
On a
What
100
is-
amp panel?
On a 100 amp panel.
Right.
And I'm like, what is going on here? And the customer was an enthusiast.
Yeah.
He liked the technology of it. He
Sure.
liked fiddling around with it. And so he was just trying different stuff,
Okay.
which I can respect, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
But the way you go about that is you call somebody who has experience and you have them, meet your needs. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we did for the guy. I walked through and I explained why this, and this was wrong.
Right.
And then I did a load calculation on his panel, which if you're getting an EV charger, whether you call us, whether you call anybody else, double check that they're doing a load calculation on your panel, because otherwise, especially on some of the older panels, the main breaker doesn't like to trip because it hasn't been exercised. And explain what exercising a main breaker is and why they don't like to trip a little bit.
Exercising a breaker is physically shutting it off and then restoring power, turning it back on. You shouldn't really do this on your own. You should have, annual inspection might be a little much, but at least every couple of years, have a licensed electrician in your home to go over the panel, go over the install, make sure your grounding is still sufficient, and exercise the main breaker. That means shutting it off, making sure that all the legs disconnect,
Yep.
and then coming back on, and making sure that they come back on. A lot of breakers that never get exercised, they'll corrode into place,
Yep.
and they won't trip. There's a lot of meltdowns that have occurred because the main panel doesn't trip, and this is especially a problem with the EV chargers, most
Yep.
specifically.
Yeah. And that's why all of these things by themselves,
Yeah.
they add a little bit, but put together, it is extremely important to do a load calculation, making sure your electrical system is right, checking your grounding,
Right.
a surge protector. All of this stuff by itself is a small thing.
Yeah.
Put together, it's really important for safety.
I love hearing these nightmare stories
Yeah.
about. I mean, I don't love it that people are in that position, but they're like humorous to me because they just shake my head and think like, how can anybody who's got common sense think that they can pull, 200 amps on a 100 amp panel?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be one thing, but then like looking at, I know you've seen EV chargers installed on SO cords before.
That was that same job we were talking about a little bit earlier with the 4 chargers.
Yeah.
I was looking at the top of the panel because just a look around made me dig a little deeper because I could tell something was likely not right that was hidden.
Okay.
And so I was looking at it, and an SO cord was used to run one of these EV
So what is an
chargers.
SO cord?
It's essentially think of an extension
A
cord.
flexible extension
Yeah.
cord. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And so this was plugged into a breaker running
10 gauge wire or what?
it was a 10 gauge wire,
Okay.
which by itself
It's rated for 30 amps.
Right, rated for 30 amps, and the charger was sized appropriately for
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But the important thing here is that it's not rated for that. It's
Right.
not supposed to be powering a load or tied directly into a panel.
Yeah, you can't run SO directly into a panel.
Exactly. So we had to disconnect that, and
Did they at least have the ground connected?
the ground was connected.
All right,
That,
okay.
We had one small win.
Thank God.
We had one small win there.
Yeah.
But for both of those cases, we had to come in and do more work than we otherwise would have had to add an EV charger.
And I'm sure the
because-
homeowner's first question is like, how much is this going to cost me?
Yep.
Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and every install is different.
I mean, that-
every case is different.
That's exactly the right question to ask is what is this going to cost me?
Yeah, and that's a responsible homeowner right
Sure.
there. Nobody wants to get ripped off. I don't like ripping people off. I never
Right.
want to have that
No.
be the scenario.
No,
So
there's got to be a value exchange, right?
yeah, absolutely. And part of why you go with somebody who is certified to do EV chargers is because they're providing the most value.
Yeah, and another note on that ICC certification, if you've had a charger installed and it's been faulty, you can file a complaint.
Yeah,
And guess what happens if a complaint gets filed against your company?
they look into it.
Oh, they'll look into it, and you'll lose your accreditation with the ICC.
Yeah,
So yeah, the people who have that ICC designation will work probably double hard to make sure that your install was done correctly, properly, that no shortcuts were taken, that it was done 100%. Because if we as an ICC certified company get a complaint against us, we'll lose our accreditation. And
Right.
I mean, that would be the end of our EV installs, basically.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Like I said, vet your companies.
Yes.
Google reviews are great. Certifications are great, and check into these certifications
Yes.
because if they're not legit, then that's a problem. That's
Yeah.
a big problem, and that can leave you in a bad spot down the road.
And to be fair, municipalities don't check that your electrician is ICC certified. This is something you need to do on your own. Any electrician can pull a permit for an EV charger. That's not an issue.
I've had one municipality require an ICC certification.
Really?
The city of Chicago requires an ICC
Okay,
certification
that makes
to pull a
sense.
permit. Yeah.
The city of Chicago has a lot of interesting designations.
But I don't like a lot of them,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do like that one because that ensures that you're getting somebody qualified.
I'll be honest. I think most municipalities, if they knew, I think maybe it's an education thing. Maybe we need to mention that to the code officials that when we pull permits for those chargers, that hey, do you guys check for ICC accreditation for EV charger installations?
Yeah.
And that's actually a big deal.
Yeah.
I think if more municipalities enforce that requirement, then more municipalities would have less issues with electricians not installing EV chargers properly.
Yeah.
We've even had other electricians ask us, hey, will you pull the permit for us for this project? And automatically the answer is no, absolutely not. We can't risk our licensing or our accreditation for another company that we're not sure how they're going to install the work, you know? That's why everything we do is directly by our own employees who do a fantastic job. They've all been trained in how to do it. They've all been background checked. They've all been thoroughly vetted. And so when you call us to go out there to do the job, you know you're getting a certified, licensed individual who represents the company well and has been trained and cross-trained on a multiple different levels. So that's a big deal. All right, so we got to that difficult conversation with the homeowner. Never pleasant.
No, it's one of my least favorite conversations to have, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we're going against exactly what they thought they were getting.
Right.
And honestly, there's only one way to have that conversation, and it's to be honest. And oftentimes what I'll do in that situation is I'll call the homeowner over, like, hey, come, I want to show you something. Look at this breaker here. Look, that's called double tap, and here's what that means.
Yes.
Your grounding system. I want to explain to you what that means and why that's important.
This is what separates contractors from salespeople.
Yep.
We're contractors. We know what we're looking at. We're going to explain the situation thoroughly to you so that you understand exactly what needs to be done in order to be code compliant and in order to get a proper install.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly one of, if not the most important things.
Yeah, it's not something you can fake at that point. I mean,
yeah,
no sales guy's going to be able to open up a panel and see exactly what needs to be done in order to be code compliant. There's just no way. So, okay. So how can people check their panel right now to know if it's okay or if they need to consider changing it, maybe because it's a fire hazard or maybe because they want to upgrade to an EV? Give me a few simple things that they can do.
Yeah. So first and foremost, don't take your panel cover off.
Okay.
Because if you're not an electrician, it is legitimately dangerous to take that
Yes.
off because you don't know what you can and can't touch in a safe manner.
Yes.
So without taking the panel cover off, you're going to walk down to your panel. First indicator is size. If it is a tiny physical box, then that's your first indicator that there's something wrong. But dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Your name, just like we said, if it says Federal Pacific, Zinsco, Pushmatic.
So on the scale of like, you need to get this out of your house right now. Federal Pacific and Stab-Lok, Zinsco, Sylvania, GTE. Those are the top 4.
Yeah.
Pushmatic's a moderate risk.
Yep.
And then you're fine if you've got your Square D, your Eatons, your Siemens, your Murrays, your GEs, or the Cutler Hammer, the CH panels. So if you see those solid panels, they're fine. The ones you need to like consider changing right now, Federal Pacific and Stab-Lok. We actually got called out to a building that was going up. Actually, the owner of the building got inspected by his insurance company, and he had Zinsco panels.
Wow.
It was an 8-unit building, I believe it was, and the insurance company was dropping him because of the fire hazard.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if the insurance company came out and said, "Yep, we're not going to insure you anymore because of these panels."
Yeah.
So you have, and typically they give you a timeline. They'll give you 30 days or 60 days to correct the issue.
Yeah.
So you can get a contractor out there, take a look at it, find out what needs to be done. In this particular situation, it was a lot of gear,
Yeah.
a lot of gear, and the poor guy was looking at 150,000
Man.
plus in order to upgrade his system, and that it's unfortunate because he got he's blindsided by it.
Right,
He did
yeah.
not see that coming. So
Yeah. One note, you mentioned Murray, GE, and Cutler Hammer.
yeah.
Well, those panels aren't known for failures. Just because of the age of some of those, it might prompt a further look. In that era, a lot of times contractors weren't using duct seal to seal the inlet from the meter to the panel.
Okay.
And in my experience, what that duct seal does is it protects moisture from entering from the outside of your house into your panel.
It prevents the exchange of cold air into your panel, which causes condensation inside of your panel.
Exactly.
So it's that cold outdoor winter air sneaking in through the pipe that goes from your meter housing into your panel. And when that cold air hits your warm air inside the house, you get condensation.
Yep.
And I've seen panels that were completely rotted out because of this.
Yep. And
Big problem.
I've even seen Square D, Eaton, and Siemens panels that are completely rotted
Sure.
out because of that.
Yeah.
So just because
The brand is okay.
right,
It may
doesn't-
not be your panel is okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Got
So
it.
that's another thing to look for. If you see on the outside of your panel that maybe the door or the actual frame of the panel has rust on it,
Yeah.
then that's a good indication that there's corrosion inside there that could be a problem.
Okay.
The other thing that I've seen in the past, specifically on Cutler Hammer, is that while that panel was fine, those breakers are actually known to cause issues. And they may not be an issue where you have to replace the whole panel, but it might be a good idea to replace the breakers in there because Eaton bought Cutler Hammer,
Right.
and you can replace those Cutler Hammer breakers with Eaton breakers. We
Correct.
did that not long ago,
Yeah.
where we saw a Cutler Hammer panel. The guts of the panel were fine, but those breakers were known to fail. So we replaced all those breakers in that panel with new Eaton breakers just to increase the peace of mind, make sure that that homeowner was safe.
Another thing you can probably safely do is put your hand over the breakers themselves to feel if they're warm.
I've
right?
got a story about that.
Okay.
I was I'm an archer myself, so
Okay.
I was at our archery club,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty involved over there. So I like to make sure that the building is in good condition, especially the electrical system. That's what I know best.
Yeah, we know that part.
And so we have electric heaters there.
High
and-
amperage.
High amperage load
Yes.
that are on consistently. And the other things that those do a lot is they're heat cycled a lot. And what
Okay.
a heat cycle means is you're pulling high amperage through that breaker, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going back down to pulling
To
nothing.
zero, right.
And that breaker will get warm during the high amperage times. Not
Yeah.
necessarily hot,
Yeah.
just a little warmer than ambient.
Right.
And then it'll heat cycle down and go back to completely cool.
Right.
And those heaters have probably been in there for 10, 15 years.
Okay.
Thousands and thousands of heat cycles on there.
Sure.
And I've been putting my hand over those breakers consistently for the past couple of years.
You can't help yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I was there the one time and I put my hand on them and I immediately pulled it back because
Okay.
it was hot.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I took my thermal camera out at that point and I took a look at them, and the hot spots on those breakers were over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is well over what they're rated for.
Oh yeah, they're rated for
75 degrees Celsius, which is about 140 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so we were about 50% over.
Roughly, roughly
Wow.
50% over. That's a big problem. And once it gets to that point, the copper bus bars, because they were copper-plated aluminum bus bars,
Okay.
they expand at a different rate than the brass that
Yes.
holds the breaker onto the bus bar.
Okay.
So what we had to do was we had to not use any of those spots that had
The damaged
gotten
lugs,
overheated
yeah.
because they were damaged on the actual bus bar. It was damaged. So we were able to put brand new breakers in that were brand new. They were not heat cycled at all.
Right.
And put them in different spots on the panel to fix it.
Okay.
And now you can put your hand on those breakers and they're just above ambient temperature.
But it'll happen again.
It'll happen again at some point.
Yeah,
and
because
that's-
that panel is still the same panel with
Yeah.
the copper-coated aluminum,
Yeah.
which has a significantly higher expansion and contraction rate than a solid copper.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why having that regular inspection, I'd been doing impromptu regular inspections on that panel for
Yeah.
years at that point.
And one of the things that we do, I know as a company, is when we're looking at a panel doing our inspections, we run a thermal camera over it to see, because sometimes you can tell that it's warm, but is it too warm or is it just okay?
Right. And those EV chargers they get warm, right?
The breakers get warm
The
100%.
breakers, the
In fact,
wire.
we had one recently where we put 6 chargers into one spot, and we actually had to relocate the breakers in the panel because they were 2-pole breakers. We had 3 of them stacked on top of each other.
Yep.
And the center breaker was tripping because the breakers get so warm. There's a thermal disc inside the breaker that'll trip when it hits a certain temperature.
Yeah.
And so the center breakers were tripping.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens. And without doing that regular inspection, you might not catch those problems in time, which
Yeah.
is why it's so important to have a licensed, competent electrician out. to
50
do
amp
that.
or 60 amp continuous load is going to cause some heat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's completely normal. You just got to pay attention to it.
And that especially the EV charger draws more amperage than any other appliance in your house,
Yep.
likely.
When you're running your EV charger, assuming your neighbors don't have EV chargers, just that one load in your house is likely drawing more electricity than the 2 neighbors next to you and the 2 in front of you.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The type of load that they draw.
And if you're doing it right, you're charging overnight off peak, so the grid can handle it.
Yep.
Yeah. But that is an awful lot of electricity.
Yeah, it really is.
So, what'd you end up doing on that one job with the 4 chargers?
So for that one, we disconnected 2 of the chargers.
Okay.
We put a load management system on the charger that we were installing.
Okay.
And then one of the chargers that was installed by a licensed electrician, we were able to just retorque the lugs, take a look inside of the charger, and torque those as well to make sure that everything was still within spec.
Okay.
But he got rid of 2 chargers, replaced it with one that was higher amperage than the other 2. So it
On a
was
load shedding system.
on the load shedding system.
Right.
So we made sure not to exceed his 100 amp service.
Yes.
And we got him back code compliant and safe.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what's the honest conversation for somebody who's got a panel that needs to be replaced and, looking at, obviously every situation is different. We replace hundreds of panels a year, so
Yeah.
we have an idea on what the costs are involved. And it varies. So give me some ranges. If I've got a regular panel, and just say it's a small panel, it's just not big enough to handle it, but 100 amp service is sufficient. I don't have to upgrade my service. What's that look like as far as cost wise? And I budgets. I'm not asking you to give me a price over the phone because nobody does it. But because we have people who watch who want to know, like, is this $50,000 or is this 20,000 or what? Help me out. Walk me through it.
Hopefully you're not looking at anything that high.
Well, that would be great.
Let's assume that your electrical system is, generally good. Your wiring isn't aluminum.
Yes.
You have mostly everything code compliant. You just need to replace that panel. You're looking at anywhere between, say we're staying the same service size as well.
Right. Yeah.
We're just doing a clean panel swap. Anywhere between 15 and 2,500.
Okay.
Would be a safe guess.
Seems to
for
be a
that.
fair number. I mean, honestly, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
All right, so say the guy's got a situation where you've got your Federal Pacific panel, the house hasn't burned down, and I'm not quite sure why I need to be worried about this, and because it's worked fine for 50 years, what's wrong with it now, right?
Right. I mean,
and then there you might have a little bit more work because obviously if the panel's 50 years old,
yeah.
your ground is obviously not any good anymore.
Yeah, ground's not good. We may have some aluminum wires in the panel, other issues that may be a little uncommon,
Yeah.
but still need to be fixed.
It's not an insurmountable amount of money, I wouldn't imagine.
No, it generally isn't.
Right.
A lot of those older panels are 60 amp panels.
Okay.
So when we're replacing those, most of the times we want to do a service upgrade as well because modern houses use much more electricity than they did.
And the minimum requirement now is 100 amps
Right.
for a residential dwelling
Yeah.
unit. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd want to go minimum 100 amps.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't go 100 amp. I would push to a little bit higher, probably
It's
200.
not that much more to go to 200
No.
at that point.
Once we're in the house doing all of that work,
Yeah.
it financially is, most cases, not every single time, most cases, it's better to just go a little bit higher to 200 amp
Yeah.
for the future electricity.
Some caveats to that: if you have overhead service, if your wires come overhead to your house, there's a little bit more work involved there.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit more money.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a budget of $5,000 to $7,000 for something like that, depending on how everything is run. And we see them all the time. I mean, Ray was telling me about one today where they ran. They've got it's a condo on a slab that the service conductors run through the wall for about 50 feet through the wall to the panel, and they want to upgrade from 100 to 200 amp.
I think that I was out on that job potentially, and if not, then
No, this is in Indiana.
Okay, yeah, no, I had the exact same thing happen this week
In Illinois.
in Illinois.
Okay.
We had it was a townhouse, so multiple units.
That's
and
typical with those guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The meter is on one side of the house, the panel is on the other side of the house,
Yeah.
and it's all finished in between there.
Yeah.
So I've actually got a creative solution for you on that.
Okay.
And we've got a video coming really soon. I shot it today
Nice.
with a representative from Span,
Oh,
which
wow.
we actually just put at our house.
Yes.
So what we proposed to this individual who is capped out on his 100 amp panel and wants to add an EV charger was to add a Span panel, because we can still do a 100 amp Span panel. And what the Span panel does is it has automatic load shedding. So it can look at it.
Tricky.
It can monitor your system.
Wow.
You can add functionally as much as you want with the knowledge that it will keep you safe by turning certain things off. And you can set a priority order.
You can tell it what to turn off.
Yep.
You can say, charge my car and turn my hot tub off.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Or the opposite. You like your hot tub.
Yeah, I do like
can
my hot
imagine
tub.
you'd be okay with going to a DC fast charger.
Can I set that, like, for certain hours will allow me, like, prioritize this from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
So that feature is coming soon. They're actively in development.
Okay.
They're actually beta testing
I'm not
it.
the first guy to think of this.
You are not the first guy to think of this. This is pretty close to priority number one for them, because it is a very, very often requested feature.
I can see where if you have all electric appliances and you've got an EV charger and you want to take a hot shower in the morning and you want to prioritize your water heater rather than your EV charger between the hours when you're going to wake up and take your shower, that would make some sense.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah,
I like
but
that.
that solution saved that particular customer a couple $1,000s
Sure.
because we didn't have to run the service wires to go to 200 amp are big. They're
Yeah.
2-aught wires.
2-aught
They're,
wires.
They're
And
this
if you're
thick.
running 100 feet or more, you're
Exactly.
upsizing on top of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to have an outdoor disconnect at that point. And if you have a 100 amp outdoor disconnect, you'd have to update that to a 200 amp outdoor disconnect, which is very pricey.
Yep.
We've got there. It's nuts right now. The cost of the goods with the electrical components. Didn't we price that out recently?
For
200 amp outdoor disconnect meter and outdoor disconnect.
yeah, I believe that
That's
our cost
outrageous.
on that is
It
1,900.
quadrupled.
Yeah.
It literally like quadrupled over the last few years, and it has a supply and demand.
Yeah.
And because of the 2023 code cycle, I think it was, where they required the outdoor disconnect on all construction, because they want the fire department to be able to shut the property down electrically from the outside. They don't want to have to send a firefighter into, if you think about this is a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Your house is on fire. Say it was a grease fire in the kitchen,
Yeah.
right? Your main breaker is not necessarily going to trip. So you've got power running throughout the house. Meanwhile, the whole house is burning, collapsing. You've got live electrical wires.
Your wires are melting.
They're melting
inside of that
inside
pipe.
the pipe. You've got hazards all over the place. The last thing that the firefighter needs to worry about is being electrocuted.
Yep.
So right now, where the code cycle changes, says you have to have an outdoor disconnect. You have to have a way to shut that power off. Prior to that mandate, it was really only required if your indoor panel was more than 10 feet away from the meter housing.
Yep.
So if it was 10 feet or more away, you had to put an outdoor disconnect. But now it's every single property.
Yep.
So
Yeah, exactly.
big deal. And those are big numbers.
Yeah.
So that's incredible that span panel was able to save that kind of money.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
I can't wait to see the video.
And that really speaks to the creative problem solving that we try to do, because we quoted it out as a standard 200 amp service upgrade
Right.
first.
Yeah,
I took a look at that number and I said, man, that's a really big ask.
we can do better
we can do a little better for this
using
guy.
technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How did the customer feel about that?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I didn't present that proposal to
Okay.
him. That was another
of our
member
sales
of our
guys,
staff.
yeah.
But yeah, I can only imagine that because we still gave the guy the option to do a 200 amp service upgrade.
Yeah, that may be a good option for him.
If he's thinking about adding, a bunch of electric appliances, then maybe that's the best route for him.
Right.
I personally don't know that.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave it up to that specific customer to
Yeah.
decide. But I can't imagine he doesn't appreciate having that option.
Yeah. All right, so close. 3 things we need to do this week.
Yeah. So first thing to do is to
Check your panel.
check your panel. Yeah.
Make sure it's not a Zinscope, Pushmatic, Federal Pacific. For someone who's just watching and wondering about their own panel, so that's number one thing to do. Check what brand they are. Big red flag on those 3. Definitely start to budget some money for replacing that panel.
Yeah.
We're not going to say it's going to catch on fire today. The chances are pretty high, though, that at some point in time, if there's a fault in your circuitry, the panel won't trip and it'll catch on fire. And so that's number 1. Check the brand name. Number 2, before you call an electrician for an EV charger, assess your panel first. A good electrician will do that automatically. Not just pull wires and install something. Do the house load calculation.
Yeah.
Get the actual, what are we drawing on this existing panel now? Make sure that we're safe to pull another 50, 60 amps.
Yeah.
And make sure you have the overhead.
And
so,
honestly, ask your electrician if they're doing that. Point blank, ask them if they're doing a load calculation.
Yes.
Because that is one of, if not the most important steps in the preparation for an install.
Yes.
Is to make sure your panel has the capacity to add that.
check your panel brand.
Yep.
Do a load calculation.
Yeah.
And the third thing, if you want a free assessment, call Eco Energy. We've got the staff. We've got people that'll come out to your house, no charge. We'll evaluate your situation and give you a good path to move forward. If the span panel is a good option for you, we'd love to talk to you about that. If a load shedding device will save you some money instead of doing the full panel upgrade, we're happy to talk about that option as well. Basically, we just want to get you using the cheapest electricity possible to power your vehicle.
Yeah.
And that's what we're about.
Yeah.
Trying to help people save money. And I think we talked about it last week or maybe the week before, but we have an app that will show you in real time. We got a report that can be printed out, emailed to you, that will show how much money you'll actually save by installing an at-home charger. And these numbers are really compelling. They pay for themselves typically within the first year. If you've got a more complicated install and it's you have service upgrades involved, definitely by year 2 or year 3, you're putting money in your pocket. Plus, you made a significant improvement in your home and in the value of your home.
Did you know that on average, electrical upgrades like an EV charger or a service upgrade have a 194% return on investment?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So this is a great place to spend money because you'll get it back plus almost double.
Yeah, I was talking to a customer this week that was like, I'm selling my house soon. I don't know how much I want to put into it. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much for noticing that or mentioning that.
Yeah.
Because you should be considering some of these options at least. That's going to open you up to more buyers, move your house faster, and get you some more money for it.
Well, and when you're going through on your for sale inspection, we get emails all the time. Hey, can we get a price on repairs? We had a home inspection done, and we need a repair price for what it's going to take. And those repair prices, I mean, they'll run into the thousands for just fixing what's there. You can upgrade. You can get in front of that and not have to give a seller credit of thousands of dollars on the back end. They walk in and say, "Oh, this guy took care of his house." Like panels upgraded, everything is safe and sound. So. That's great information. Yeah. 194%. I didn't realize that.
It's crazy.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, once again, thanks for tuning in to Plugged In with Eco Energy. I'm Joe, and Conrad's here, and we'll see you next week.